to the Radical Brilliance podcast with Arjuna Arda and brilliant guests from around the world who are contributing to the evolution of humanity. Today's guest is Isaac Shapiro, who's going to talk to us about the impact of Papaji. So here's your host, Arjuna Arda.
Hiya. Do you know, 28 years ago, almost exactly to the day, actually, it's almost like the anniversary, a few days late, I was already living in India, near to Bombay, and I heard about a man who lived in Lucknow, which is really in Uttar Pradesh. It's nowhere very special. It's not a particularly holy city, but lived in Lucknow, and people were going to see him, and something was happening. And by that point, I was so tired of the hamster wheel life of being a seeker that I thought, hey, I'll try anything. So I went to India. I went to Lucknow. I got on a flight to Delhi and then a train to Lucknow. I went to stay at the Clark's Avad Hotel. And I looked up Poonja in the phone book. This guy's name was Poonja. So I looked up in the phone book. There was no listing for Poonja under those initials. There was another Poonja. So I called and I simply heard somebody on the other end said, I will meet you in the morning, 9 a.m. Indian people often have betel leaf in their cheek, so it's hard to hear what they're saying. I will meet you in the morning at 9 a.m. So next morning I went down dutifully to the lobby, and there was a man on his scooter. I got on the back of the scooter and had the most hair-raising trip of my life. We were weaving through traffic. Every turn looked like it was going to be the end of us. But we wove through the traffic, and finally we got to this house in the suburbs, really in a quiet area near the forest. And it turned out I was actually sitting on the back of the scooter of the son of the man I wanted to see. So he opened the door, I walked through the door, and there was this old man sitting on a tucket, like a sort of a low wooden table with a mattress on top. He was sitting there just staring into space. There was about 8 people sitting on the floor. As soon as I met his eyes, met his gaze, I knew it was over. I knew there was no way to survive this guy. The proximity, the intimacy, there was no way to get around this. It was, the game was up. And sure enough, over the next few days, my experience of reality was permanently changed forever. And the myth of separation was put to rest. I'm not saying I've been an exemplary human being since then, but at least when I'm being an asshole, I know that I'm being an illusory asshole. It doesn't take long to relax back into being present. There were many people around him at that time. Altogether, during the 7 years that I was with him on and off until he died, I saw thousands of people meet him. Some met him and just saw a sweet old man and wondered what all the fuss was about. Some of them had a peak experience which then dissipated, and it put them back into a rhythm of seeking again. Some people made him into a kind of a religion or a kind of a thing, and so they really then adopted a lifestyle based around his picture, his community. And some people, actually statistically relatively few, imbibed what he had pointed out so that it became their own sovereignty, it became their own experience. You couldn't wash it away. And one of the people who I feel that is most true for is Isaac Shapiro. I met Isaac in Poonjaji's living room. We then lived together on several occasions in Lucknow in the same house, and we've been on and off together ever since as friends. Isaac is someone who has really, you could say, he has become the teaching, and the teaching has become him. He has become truly an embodiment of freedom. So we had a chance to reflect a little bit on the after effects, the aftershock of Papaji, and I hope you'll enjoy this conversation I had with Isaac over Zoom. I hope it will be helpful and useful and give you some reflection on the way that these kind of awakening teachings can marinate down into the very marrow of your bones. Hey, Isaac, my brother of a very, very, very long time. How long have we known each other?
Since 92, I think it was, yeah.
Maybe 91, I think.
91, yeah, 91, could be.
So that's a long time.
Yeah. True.
And we met in the context of Poonjaji, Papaji. We met in his living room, actually, I think, for the first time. And afterwards, I believe, if my memory serves me well, we became pretty good friends, right?
And we even lived in the same home.
We lived in the same home together. So that's now almost 30 years ago. I guess it's 28 years ago. And I wanted to invite you, I'll tell you why I want to invite you. I wanted to invite you to reflect upon the impact of what happened in Lucknow 28 years ago on our lives today. And the reason I want to do that, and I'll keep this introduction pretty short, the reason I want to do that is I noticed that all these years later, when I meet with different people who I knew back then, sometimes meet in person, sometimes on Facebook, there is actually a wide variety of ways that that time with Papaji has been integrated. And I'm not going to label them all, but it's like everybody has found their own way to hold that now or to be held by it. So I thought it would be interesting. And the reason I particularly wanted to chat with you is, for me and my own particular worldview, you are probably the friend I have from those days who has most touched me recently, you know, where we got together in Germany and we reflected a little bit on how has all this settled after 28 years. For me, you were the most honest, the most impressively authentic of anybody I knew from that time. So that's why I felt like I just really wanted to spend some time sharing with you. So
I just am enjoying the way our systems meet each other here. We're sitting here.
Yeah.
And to me, it feels pretty naked and vulnerable and honest. And
yeah.
Nobody with anything to prove or anything to do. Just in a way, you could say the sweetness of the heart meeting the heart without anything in between.
Hopefully.
Well, even that, it's like funny because all of a sudden some movement happens and the system, when I talk about the system, something happens and an automatic movement happens and suddenly there's resistance. And the flow, seems like the flow is not there for a moment or two or whatever.
Yeah. So not everybody who's listening to this is necessarily going to know what we mean by Papaji and Lucknow, I see that you've got your pictures there, and actually Papaji is sitting in this corner, but he's there for me every day. So maybe just to bring everybody up to speed, let's each of us take a few minutes and just share what happened in 1991 and what was that all about? And then perhaps we can do another round on how has that impacted us and see how we hold all this today.
Yeah. Oh, for me, when I arrived in Lucknow, I felt somehow really deeply seen by this being. It's like when he met me, he said to me, "Oh, you've already visited all these different locals and you've come here to finish your journey." And because I'd taken a lot of LSD in my youth and really So, and he could see it. He said, now just bring your attention to awareness. And it was like where all that journeying had brought me was to just exploring where our attention was focused and how it was focused. And when he said it to me, it was just like, yeah, I wonder why I never thought of that before. And so it wasn't even a big bang or anything like I saw happening with many people around Papaji, was like falling into nothingness. It was just, oh, of course, yeah. Because somehow before my attention was busy with my perceptions and interpretations and all that stuff and what it all meant. And so then just that invitation of his, it was like, yeah, it opened up, like I was scheduled to travel and hold awareness groups, I called them in those days, and I just knew it was finished, whatever it was that I was doing. And anyway, that was kind of interesting because that was the way I made my living, but I knew it was done. I couldn't do that anymore. And so when I showed up at my next venue, I told people, listen, because people book in advance and you have to book centers and all that stuff. I said, look, I can't do what I was doing. And they said, well, if you found something better, you got to show us. And my response was, I'm not qualified. I don't know what. I mean, I don't have words for it. I don't know. It's not a doing particularly. It's just a seeing. And they said, well, whatever, we're in. And so and so my idea at that point was just to get back to Lucknow and just marinate in that field and see what was next. But when I got there, then Papaji said, I'd like you to be available to people for these meetings. But what was cool is he never told me what to do. He never ever said to me, do it like this, or this is what it's about. And somehow for me, I knew that in his company, every time I went back there, just how that invitation functioned, it stripped away other layers. And I can't say it was comfortable. In fact, it wasn't, because, but I knew the value of it. And so, kept showing up and being, and it was never like, he never was like a teacher. It was just what spontaneously happened in being around him, like the next seeing of where something had crystallized or something had become something. And and his wicked sense of humor and how he played with us was just, for me, exquisite. And I could see again, there was all these different perspectives on what a master was, and for me, that wasn't where it was for me. It was just like there was a love there and the recognition. I mean, it's like I knew that I was transparent to him, and there was often times when I'd actually go out of the meetings there because the mind was going so crazy, and I knew he could see everything, and it wasn't pretty. And just to be that naked and with all that crap going on, or I could call it crap, but just judgments and opinions, and not able to stop it and not able to do anything about it. It just seemed to come up thick and strong around him. But I knew it was actually beautiful and good. So I never went there for the high. I went there for being exposed in a funny kind of a way, or not even me being exposed, because I could see it. It had nothing to do with, with a sense of me. It was just the unconscious information still functioning in the system that can only function unconsciously. It's not, I don't think anybody consciously decides to suffer. It's like somehow things play in us that are playing unconsciously, which literally means nobody is doing it. It's just the information from generations of ancestors. And then there's the opportunity in that of being present to it, being naked in that. And that's what interests me, just being around and being with all these expressions of that same intelligence without ownership of any of it, and just being available to those, I would say, mechanisms that have troubled man, womankind forever, for them to become conscious and then get integrated in that. And to me, that seems infinite. It doesn't seem like there's an end to that. That's just, so I'm just here for that. And yeah.
If you're enjoying this podcast with Arjuna Arda and his radically brilliant guest, you might also enjoy our 8-week online group coaching program. It's an opportunity to go deep and get stable in practices that enhance your own brilliance. We only take 20 participants at a time, so in a small and intimate group, you can go through the whole radical brilliance cycle. You'll have an accountability partner in another brilliant aspirant from somewhere around the world. The 8-week coaching program involves 8 one-hour webinars with Arjuna Arda and a group of other radical brilliance coaches. You'll also receive 1 30-minute coaching session with your own personal coach every week and 1 90-minute coaching session with Arjuna himself. It's the ideal opportunity to drop deep into yourself, into the source of your own creativity, and to get support for an entire 8 weeks of mining your own radical brilliance and bringing it forth into a project or creation that can truly serve the future of humanity. Find out more at radicalbrilliance.com and click on the Programs tab.
Maybe I could reciprocate and just tell my story a little bit. And
I would love, yeah.
And then we can see, we can move forward to see how all this played out in our lives. So for me, when I arrived in Lucknow, I was 34, and I had been really primarily identified with spiritual seeking, quotes, for 20 years, since I was 14, which was primarily motivated by intense suffering. Yeah. Like my family had an above average incidence of suicide and depression.
Mine too, by the way.
Yeah. So I was either going to just go under or find some way to, I realized psychotherapy wasn't a strong enough medicine for me. So I was either going to get swept under or find a way to transcend my conditioning, So when I say 20 years, it wasn't only, meditation, spiritual work. It was also a lot of kind of alternative psychotherapeutic work. So when I met him, I was 34. It was 1991. And I walked into the room. There was 8 people sitting on the floor around him. And our eyes met. And it was a shock. It was like a mouse meeting a hungry lion. It's like, okay, there's absolutely no way I'm going to survive this. I look in his eyes, I realize this guy is ferocious, and has no, he's just going to go straight for the jugular, right? in the most liberating way. Yeah. So there was a tea break. Well, actually, it wasn't a tea break. It was a pun break, where he would go back into his bedroom in the back, and he would pull pun. It was he had this ball of pun in his mouth and roll through the pun. So he called me in, and he said to me, he was very kind of in your face. He said like, "What do you want? Why did you come?" Right? It's like, "Wow." And I went, oh, I said, well, I feel like I've been seeking as long as I can remember. What is in the way of finding? And he looked at me like this was the most utterly stupid question anyone had ever asked. He said, what's in the way of finding? Seeking, of course, right? Which kind of blew my mind. I mean, maybe today it sounds obvious, but back then it blew my mind because I'd never seen it that way, that the activity of being a seeker and being involved in all these processes was getting in the way as much as it was helping.
Yeah.
So then finally we went back into the main room with these 8 people. And again, towards the end of the meeting, he said to me, what do you want? Like, what do you want? He was like an ex-army officer. So he was quite, So I kind of gave him the answer that I suppose it's almost like it was the correct answer to give. It was the answer that I was used to giving. I said, I want to be free. That was the kind of spirit, that was the spiritually regurgitated answer. I want to be free. I want to be enlightened, And he said to me, okay. He said, okay, like that was not a problem. Okay, no worries, And I was like, what? And then he said, okay, you show me that which is not free and I will make it free. Like demonstrate to me that which is bound, I will set it free. I thought that's a great deal. All I've got to do is give him my ego, he'll set it free, right? So I went back to my hotel room. I was staying at the Clark's Abad at that time. Remember the Clark's Abad?
You remember the Clark's? I've stayed there too.
Yeah, and I went into a process for about a week that was something like insanity. So I can remember just laying on the bed. It was August. It was hot. Laying on the bed, and all these thoughts were just spinning around. Like tomatoes, ratatouille, computer. Liberation, Ramana, blancmange. Just all these things just flowing around. But they didn't have any coherence anymore. Just my mind was going out of control, really like madness. And I felt very uncomfortable because I think that seeking identity had played such a central role that without that steering the ship, it was just like chaos, And finally, one night after, I think it was about a week, one night, it was actually I think it was a Friday night because there was satsang on a Saturday. I wrote this little letter to him and I said, I give up. I give you my ego. Please set it free. Something poetic like that. I didn't even know what I was talking about, but I just wrote this out, folded it up. And I wasn't really sleeping at that time. I was so disturbed, but I kind of went into a sort of somnambulous state. And about 6 a.m, my body kind of came to with this sense of urgency, like I have to pay my taxes, that kind of urgency. And so in this urgency, I had this, I have to do something. Oh, that's right. I have to give Poonjaji my ego to set it free. All right. So I went, okay, but I was half asleep. I went, okay, let's find it. And I whispered, let's find it. Let's find it. Let's find it. Let's find it. And the next thing I knew, the body just burst out laughing and just continued to laugh for like 30 minutes, uncontrollably, deep belly, whole body laughing. Because in the actual looking for it, metaphorically, the hand that was looking just extended infinitely into space. Yeah. So in that moment, there was actually the realization, not I have to get rid of the ego, but that the ego was made up. Mm. And once it's made up, it creates this whole construct of a personal life, but it actually exists only in imagination. So that was my story, and then I went back to him and we had this little exchange where somebody asked a question. He said, oh, wait a minute. I have to settle my account with this man, with pointing at me. He said, come here. And he said, I have to settle my account with you. I didn't know what that meant. And I just went and I whispered in his ear, the account is closed, meaning, and then he whispered to me, he said, thank God. He said, I was talking to you the whole night. Kind of amazing exchange, Yeah. So that initiated this kind of recognition. I don't really know how it happened, where spaciousness became predominant. For about 3 weeks, there was really very little else going on at all. There was this blessed 3 weeks where there was really almost no thought. The spaciousness was so huge and immediate. There's not much else going on. But then I had to go back to Pune, where I had been living, to pack up some stuff. And then it started this, you could say like dual state, I suppose. I don't know, where there was the spaciousness. It seemed at that point like it was a dual state. I don't think it's really a dual state, but it seemed like there was this infinity, and now the activities of the individual occurring within the infinity. And so again, when I got back, I remember it was raining like crazy. I don't know why it was raining. It must have been some sort of, I don't know what it was. There was I don't know, Indian monsoon, or I don't know what they call that, but it was raining like crazy, like huge, like flooding rain. And I remember I went to his house and I said something along the lines of, you know, I got it and now I've lost it. I didn't say exactly that, but something to that effect. And you know what he did? I can't remember exactly the sequence. He got really mad, and somehow, I can't remember the sequence, but as I was leaving the house, he said to me, "Don't ever talk like that." And he actually gave me a nudge, and I fell into this puddle of water. He was ferocious, you know, and somehow it locked it in that kind of thinking of gaining it and losing it was completely masochistic, you know?
Yeah.
And then fast forward 9 months of really a blessed life with him there, which after that, it wasn't any more talk about spirituality. It was talk about those gulab jamun candies, you know, sweets, and it was just talk about regular life, you know. For 9, he was quite studious to not talk anymore about spirituality with me. It was just all about getting married, all this kind of very practical stuff. And after about 9 months, my wife at the time, Subhadra, who became Catherine later, she got pregnant, which I've always assumed I had something to do with. So she got pregnant, and she wanted to go back to America because she was feeling nauseous. And then he didn't actually say anything to me for quite a while. He started to talk to his Indian friends in Hindi, saying to his Indian friends, like Reena Nanda, there's an Indian woman, saying, Arjuna, and this other guy, Om Prakash, saying to them, Arjuna is going to go back to America and teach. But he didn't say it to me. He said it to these other people. So it came back to me indirect and exaggerated. So I went to him finally and I said, you know, I've been hearing a rumor about teaching. He said, oh, no, I've been hearing a rumor about teaching. He said, oh yeah, you go teach. Like that. And I said, you must be joking. That's what I said to him. You've got to be joking, right? Because it's like, I didn't feel like remotely that was appropriate. I said, you've got to be joking. And he said to me, yes, the truth is a great joke. Go share it with as many people as possible. And there was a couple of other sort of indirect things like that. Maybe I'll share one more with you. That I went back a few days later, very disturbed, because I felt like, you know, the mind has not stopped. The emotional reactivity has not stopped. I felt like he's got the wrong guy, because there is still a person here. Yes, there's this spaciousness, but this kind of rather broken individual is still there. You know, it's still possible to find him. And I had this feeling I should be completely obliterated. You know, there should be no more sense of a me, you know. So I went back to him after a few days, and he was actually sitting in his living room alone, reading the newspaper. He had the newspaper spread out on his dining table, and he was reading it. But he was actually reading the small ads, like the classified ads, you know, like Lucknow office seeks office boy for duties or something like that, you know. He's reading all these ads meticulously, which was his want. He found everything fascinating. So I sat down next to him. We were alone in the room. And I said, Papaji, you know, you asked me to teach. He went, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And I said, you know, I don't feel really awake. I feel like I am in the process of awakening, which I thought was a sort of humble thing to say. And he looked up from his newspaper and he said, don't you ever speak or think like that again. Like ferocious, you know. And again, it was like a shock, you know, that he was sort of, I don't know what happened, but he was shocking me into realizing, like, giving these thoughts and feelings
in the energy, yeah.
And the energy was just like looking a gift horse in the mouth. Like it was my responsibility to nurture the infinite and not nurture the separate. So that's my story anyway. And so we both ended up in some way or other teaching at his nudge, you know. I didn't do it for that long. I did it for a few years only.
To me, it never felt like teaching. And also it's an interesting exploration in a way to me, because it's like this, to me, it feels like finding this balance point of recognizing the space that everything's appearing in, but not ignoring what's rising up. It's like being, like a balance point of being present to it, but without being overly present, without giving it energy, but also not ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist. So it's like, to me, it's like I use the metaphor of riding a bicycle, just that point of balance where it's all included. It's all just here. If it's over focused on just awareness, then these movements that come up, it's like, there's no humanness left. There's no, and so this thing of, okay, yeah, wow, yeah, there's this sadness coming up, or these thoughts are coming up, or there's some level of dis-ease or discomfort, and then just, being available as that spaciousness, for that to have space. It's just, wow. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's for me, the invitation. And then just being around and just, not making it mean anything, not like not making that mean that you're not awake, or not making that mean that there's anywhere to get to or anything like that. That is it, actually. That's one way of speaking it is this, in the spiritual traditions, they often talk about service. And to me, the service is being present to those sensations that have automatically been rejected for generations. Yeah. And just welcoming and being, in a way, they're portals, doorways into, if there's just really gentle presence.
Have there been any, you've been now in that, whatever we call it, I'm going to call it teaching role, even though you may not call it teaching, it for the want of a better word, it appears to be, it looks like that. It looks like somebody at the front and, so we'll just put it in quotes, air quotes. Yeah. You've been in that role now. Well, obviously you were somewhat in that role before, but you've been in that role with satsang or gatherings for close to 30 years.
Yeah.
Have there been any other turning points for you, or particular points? Because there were for me, and I'd like to ask you first, were there any points where it pivoted or it grew to include something more?
Many. I
mean, what stands out?
Bumping into Peter Levine's work.
Trauma work, yeah. What's trauma work? Embracing the Tiger, or is it? What's the name?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a bunch of them, but it's like just starting to recognize how much, what's called trauma, but to me what it is unintegrated information. It's just information that produces an automatic response that shows up as fight, flight, or freeze, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, kind of, and there's so many different kinds. There's the generational stuff that we'd never even had anything to do. That's just like, you can see in kids that came from survivors of the Holocaust. They're carrying trauma in their system, although they never experienced it. And so the same thing from, like our generation is a generation after the Second World War. All the people, I'm in Europe a lot, so there's all these people that are carrying the trauma of that Second World War in their family. So there's that kind of trauma. Then there's the trauma of, like, in the womb, like, a lot of people are conceived unintentionally, and the first thought is, oh, this is a problem. And, like, how that manifests is that these people never feel they belong anywhere, or that they have a right to be. And they don't even know where it comes from. but it's like that imprint that's there. And so, and it's a tricky one to get to in a certain sense, because there's no memory associated usually with it. There's just these automatic ways that life functions that is terrible. I mean, really horrific.
Yeah. Now are you saying that was true prior to this moment of awakening, or you say that you continue to discover layers of that afterwards?
Continue still now, daily. I mean, to me, it's like,
right.
And then there's, like just the...
And can I just pause you for a minute?
Yeah.
I just want to catch that while you say it. So, Isaac Shapiro, what you've just said is, just want to bookmark this. What you've just said is why I adore you, why I love you without bounds, and why I trust you so deeply. Because what you've just been willing to say right now, after 28 years of sitting in the seat at the front of the room and having hundreds of people, sometimes thousands, looking to you as the reference point for awakening, which can so easily cause us to feel, well, okay, well, if all these people are giving me this much juice, then I'm the cat's whiskers, But you're willing to say, yes, even after that grace of having had a strong moment of awakening, these contractions have continued to arise, and they continue to arise to this day. That is where I give my allegiance, That is, for me, and I'm just speaking personally, when I see a teacher, and of which there are quite a lot, and I'm not going to mention names, but when I see a teacher taking a purely absolute view, like I am that, you are that, end of story, don't touch the mind, boom, boom, I feel like, okay, that is in an absolute sense true, but in some way I can't describe, when I see someone willing to say, yes, there is this infinite consciousness, we can absolutely meet as this infinite consciousness now, but let's use that to pretend that there are not these, what in India they call samskaras, continuing. I trust that with my life. I trust that so deeply when I hear that spoken.
I mean, and honestly, it's like this, I think something that I heard at least Papaji say was, it takes two wings for a bird to fly. Both knowledge of who you are and love.
Yeah.
And to me, what that translates, that love translates, is, I would say compassion, that capacity to feel with.
Yeah.
Who this system, whatever's like playing in it, and whatever's playing in any system, because I see that it's not personal to anyone. It's just like it's all the same thing in a certain way. And so one way of speaking is just noticing where something in this organization doesn't want to feel something. And it has a movement to get away.
Yeah.
That's where there's gold.
Yeah.
Because it's like, that produces some sense of separation. That produces some sense of, like you and me and all that. And it's like a little tiny movement, usually undetected. It's just like so familiar. And so, it's funny, I don't even call it vigilance. To me, it feels more like a love affair. It's like how love functions. It's like love is just available for that process, because it doesn't have an option, actually.
As you're listening to this conversation with Arjuna Ardha and his radically brilliant guest, you might feel inspired to go deeper into your own expression of radical brilliance. Come join us for a 1-week Radical Brilliance Laboratory held in a beautiful rural location in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. During the laboratory, you'll have an opportunity to dive deeply into all 4 quadrants of the Brilliance cycle. This means you'll be able to explore experiences of consciousness without boundaries. And you'll be able to start accessing original impulses of creativity from within yourself that can become your unique contribution to the world. You can get in touch with your own learning and integrate mistakes that will allow you to mature and grow. You'll have the chance to deeply mine your own resources as well as connect with other brilliant people in a small, intimate context for a week. You can check out the Radical Brilliance Laboratories at radicalbrilliance.com under the Events tab.
You know, I think I'm really with you, if I understand everything you're saying. The piece that I want to make sure the piece I'm interested to check if we're on the same page.
I love it.
And I'm saying this particularly today, I'll tell you why in a minute. But the piece where I'm interested to know if we're on the same page is my experiences, even after 28 years, where, to be honest with you, you know, I mean, this is more like saying thank you than look at me, hooray. You know, I mean, this is more in the spirit of a big thank you to life. That, you know, I had this incredible blessing and grace to meet this ferocious lover of freedom. And, you know, I had the incredible grace, as if one lion of freedom and truth wasn't enough, I also had the grace to meet this guy, Tulku Rinpoche, who was, I don't know how I got so lucky, but he was at that time, the Dzogchen tutor to the Dalai Lama, and the kind of lineage holder of the Nyingma tradition in Tibetan Buddhism. I got to have an afternoon with him, just me and a trance. I don't know how I got so lucky. It was ridiculous grace, you know. But yeah, so what I wanted to say is that's an incredible grace. And as a result of that grace, this kind of infinity doesn't really go away. But that's not, look at me, how great I am. It's like, wow, you know, those guys saved my sorry ass from myself, right? That was a gift. You know, so the infinity is there, but what arises in the infinity sometimes, not always, now it's kind of a pretty lulled phase for a while, and then when it comes, it's like suddenly, oh my God, how could I have missed all this shit? You know, when it comes, the piece I just want to acknowledge is it is painful. You know, when a layer reveals itself, it hurts like hell. And I think that's the piece that sometimes goes unexpressed. That because some of us have been lucky enough to be graced with an irreversible meeting with Poonja or Urgyen Tulku or something, that therefore the pain of contraction never arises again. And I want to say it does. And if I may, just in the interest of, you know, honesty, I'd love to just share a little bit of what I've gone through lately. Is that okay? Yeah, I'll keep it short. So last week, I led a retreat with some very amazing, talented, beautiful people who are, all of them in their own way, global. They have the capacity to influence things globally. I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to work with people who have this kind of global reach. And that's what I kind of love, you know, is I'm really intent right now on helping to turn the boat around, you know, while we still have an opportunity. And so strong people, you know, people who are very confident in their own leadership abilities, people who really have a strong message. And so out of a fairly small group, I got into a little discomfort with not one, not two, but three people during the week, right? Which the nature of the discomfort, it all got smoothed out by the end of the week, but the nature of this discomfort really powerfully, with a feeling of shame that I like, you know, it's a shame that I would not be without. There was a feeling of, I did not handle this well, right?
Yeah.
I did not handle this well. It was not skillful. I mean, there was forgiveness, we got smoothed out, and I felt in not handling it well, I felt the shame of, I did not fully step up to what I could have been in this week. Now that shame did eventually move through into self-forgiveness and commitment to clearing whatever came. But that's an example, and actually it's a funny thing. What I've noticed is when another layer of contraction reveals itself, it's like when it reveals itself, oh my God, it was there, actually, it was actually there the whole time. And I just managed to overlook it for like all these decades. I just managed to live with it. And now it's in my face. So I just happened to be having this call with you in the midst of a wound like that I haven't actually had something come up this strong for, I don't know, months or a year, And it sometimes comes up to me in my marriage with Shamali that we've been really good for a while, really good, like really in love, but it's not like that all the time. And when it's not like that, it hurts like hell,
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
So this is the piece I just wanted to share, that it...
just in my life, nothing even grandiose. I have a property that I have some renters on. This morning I got given notice by these guys, and nothing wrong with that, but there's a play that's going on where there's some aggression in the way of giving notice and some projection onto me in it. And I just, it's like I notice, it's okay, wow. It's like in the grand scheme of things, such a tiny little ripple.
Yeah.
It's tiny, but it disturbs. It's a disturbance. And does it disturb, when I say it's like, it's not one of these huge opportunities, but I see it as an opportunity because it's like just there's something niggling just under the surface.
Yeah.
And, oh, how beautiful. I get to just not try to change it, not try to fix it, not try to understand it. There's just something inviting me.
An owie, yeah.
An owie, and I can, it's easy. Oh, they're an asshole. So
yeah, right. It's so easy.
That doesn't work anymore for me.
No, lovely. Yeah.
There's just an owie, and okay. Oh,
yeah.
I see. Yeah.
You've just kind of labeled the trap of being in the position that we've both been in as facilitators. There is such a temptation when there's something that's not love with somebody. There is such a temptation because we're the guys who've written the books. We're the guys, we're the guys with the biggest penises here. Right?
Well, you can hold a retreat, and you can, like in the sense, in interaction wise, there can be like a 97% strike rate, but then there's still the 3% where it just didn't meet itself.
If you're getting 97%, then I bow to you.
in the sweetest way. And then for me, it's like, this capacity to come when I'm resting in my room afterwards and just kind of feeling what's any residues that are there and just coming back and saying, listen, I see that yesterday, however it played, it didn't land exactly
right.
And I just want to apologize. I'm sorry. It's like, I see there's no bad intention on anybody's part.
Yeah.
But something in this system hasn't integrated whatever that piece is. And
I love it, man. I love it.
And it missed, yeah. I
love you so much for that, What I was just wanting to complete for a minute is when a kind of disharmony happens, there is such a temptation being in this position of being the facilitator to say, oh, you need to look at your stuff. You've got this. And often there's truth. It is possible as the facilitator to accurately point out where there is contraction in that person. But what I find it helpful to remember is there is this text from Atisha who created the 7 points of mind training. And there's actually, I'll just take this picture down for a minute because there's a lovely, oh, okay, it's gone. Anyway, there's a lovely interpretation of that, this thing, the Heart Treasures of the Awakened Ones, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche.
Yeah, that Dilgo, yeah.
Favorite books. Anyway, so there is a temptation, maybe that's a t-shirt, maybe not, I can't remember, but there is a temptation to say, oh, you know, I'm the teacher, blah, blah, you need to look at this.
Yeah.
But then Atisha, the very first line of the 7 points of mind training is, consider all phenomena as a dream, right? Consider all phenomena as a dream. So in other words, the safest disposition you can bring to this human life is imagine you're dreaming it, right? So what I've come, and I wanted just to reflect on you with this, that the way that I've found works best to go through this is, so there's a stage that we all have, or we all have had, where there is no recognition of spaciousness, only movie. Then there's only drama, there's only blame, there's only dominance one way or the other. That's all there is. It's just like, you know, dog eats dog kind of thing. And then there's something happens that's happened to you and me, and it's happened to many people, where there is a powerful enough recognition of spaciousness that it doesn't go away, right? So now there's a kind of a permanently accessible recognition of spaciousness. And in that, what I would, for me, I don't know if you resonate with this, what I would call this like a second phase, you know? There's like, now there's watching everything. It's like, okay, now there's the spaciousness. Oh, and here's this happening and I'm watching it. And then it's all kind of a little bit dreamlike, but it's just passing and it's not happening to anybody. And, you know, there is no me, there is no you. This is just arising on its own, right? But what I noticed in that second phase of this is all passing on its own, a whole bunch of shit was going on that I actually didn't intend, right? So
100%.
I was breaking my word and not really intending the consequence of that. I was, you know, creating arguments in my marriage and not really intending that. So a whole bunch of things was going on where I go, okay, I don't really like that, but it's just the rising on its own. And it took me a long time to realize that you can, if you like, hold that view that everything's just self-arising and there's nobody here. But there is actually, what I've discovered, there is the invitation to be grateful for the spaciousness and to remember Atisha's statement, consider all phenomena as a dream, which means in a way that's a little paradoxical, because it does kind of reintroduce the idea of a me, that if something's happening in this dream where I don't like the consequence, there is a level of kind of mastery to redream it. And to let me just finish. I don't want to create misunderstanding.
Yeah,
there is actually the possibility to say, okay, so here's this spaciousness. I am a dream character in the spaciousness, and all of this is dream. But actually, in a funny way, within all of this, there is an element of playful creativity, and it is possible to recreate the dream and actually to not have arguments and to not be late and not break my word. And this gets confused sometimes, this way of speaking gets confused with the kind of the law of attraction, like I am manifesting, but it's different because it's not really a solid I doing that. It's not like the dreamed avatar is now changing the dream. The dreamed avatar can't. It's more like spaciousness itself has a humorous ability to redream things in the same way that it originally dreamed everything, you know? And that's what I've been playing with, is realizing, like, if there's a conflict with somebody that actually hurts, it's a little invitation to exercise more creative freedom in how we're living. What do you think?
So I so get what you're speaking, you know, to me, and I find it a marriage of all of those things that you were just speaking, because to me, in the thinking that it's your stuff or my stuff, then I haven't found that useful. I just see that there's stuff that's happening in the field that's actually been going on forever and that nobody's actually doing. But the fact that nobody's doing that doesn't mean it doesn't need attending to. It doesn't mean that it's not that. See, the moment I go, oh, that's your stuff, let's attend to that there. I don't. To me, it's just like it's arising, and there's an opportunity here as that spaciousness to include and to welcome.
Yeah.
Unreservedly, not trying to solve it, not trying to fix it, but allowing. It's like I know that we've spoken about this before. It's like there's something that happens in the nervous system when it's that whatever's coming, that discomfort, has space to spread throughout the whole nervous system.
Yeah. You're saying the discomfort has space to spread. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
And then it's not yours or it's not mine.
Right.
But that a lot of times in my view, it takes another nervous system to be present there, because our nervous system is so quick to want to kind of get away from it. And then there's another system just holding hands, like together, something gets accomplished or something happens that doesn't happen when it's too much for that nervous system, because the nervous system is an automatic and it wants to get away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the power of love and compassion.
That's the power of love and compassion.
We can hold each other in forgiveness.
Oh man!
And in awareness, and that's what I love about my friendship with you. Even though we don't see each other very often, I always feel we can hold each other in that spaciousness, and let everything be okay.
What a gift that is!
Yeah. I think
Then there's no teacher. There's no teaching. There's just compassion. There's just love meeting itself.
Yeah.
With nowhere to get to, with just, whatever this nervous system has through its journey, you could say, develop the capacity to be present to, it becomes available. And vice versa, because, everyone's been doing their, exploring, and you never know where the next gift happens, where someone. It's like I hang out with some beings that they've really spent a lot of time in the prenatal or in the ancestral. And, my system gets so much value from that. And it's like, that's one of the things, it's like it's starting to be able to discern, okay, that's generational information, that's prenatal, that's this lifetime trauma. And they're all different territories,
Yeah, I think the key is really, the key for me, and which is, again, why I love you so much, the key is to be able to hold this spaciousness and not deny it, but to also not pretend that any of us are immune
to those movements,
to the web of Maya, of not love. Because once we...
Let me tell you a story from Papaji, one of the last stories that I experienced with him.
Yeah.
The last time I went back to Lucknow.
Which year was this?
I'm terrible with...
he died in 97.
It must have been 96.
Okay, a year before, yeah.
Yeah, and I was there and I looked at him, and to me it felt like there'd been a huge acceleration in him.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure of my perception, because it was like, wow, he was like so beyond anything I'd ever met.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure if it was just a projection. And, so I said to him, Papaji, I don't know if it's just my eyes but it feels like there's been a huge deepening in you.
Yeah.
Since I last saw you. And he looked at me and he said, of course, otherwise it would be limited.
Yeah.
And I could have fallen to his knees, because just shortly before that, I'd bumped into someone who was saying, awareness doesn't deepen. And, someone who's quite considered someone.
Okay.
And like I've been...
someone who's considered someone. A G, one of the G's.
and so I was like, oh, am I missing something? Because in my experience, there's been huge deepening over the years.
Yeah.
And I was going, well, maybe that's just, like a personal,
right.
Still some kind of samsaric perspective happening in me. I wasn't sure. And so somehow, without asking the question, Papaji answered it to me. It's just, yeah, of course, otherwise it'd be limited.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying this podcast, you might enjoy dropping by radicalbrilliance.com. We've got an ebook for you which explains the radical brilliance cycle, the way the cycle gets blocked, and the practices that best open up the cycle again. We also have 5 days of gifts and insights for you, delivered every day by email and video, which go much more deeply into the phases of the cycle, the ways that the cycle can become a kind of diagnosis of blocked brilliance, and a way to accurately find the right practice for each person. In addition, you'll receive a video about the single most important practice that we have determined affects brilliance, and another video about everyone's favorite topic, brilliant sex. It's all totally free, prepared for you as our guest. Please come to radicalbrilliance.com. Register on the homepage and you'll receive the ebook right away. Then you'll be guided through the 5 days of videos to take you deeper into your own radical brilliance.
I can't remember, Isaac. Did you? Well, let's just change topics a minute as we wind up today. So I wanted to kind of see if I could get from you, a quick sort of overview of where you're at today. After all, there's been evolution over 28 years. I'm wondering if you could somehow create a little summary, a wind up on, how do you see things today? That may be difficult to do, but
it's just like how, very briefly, it's like huge gratefulness. Just immense gratefulness. The deepest interest, I would say, is meeting the sensations of this moment, because all we have are these sensations as the beloved, and just watching where anything falls short of that.
Yeah.
It's like, we meet.
Yeah.
What I call Arjuna is a bunch of memories, but in this moment, there's sensations, like something senses and feels what's happening in your nervous system through these filters, of course, not saying that it's accurate always, but, as best as it can. And then just feeling where it's just flowing absolutely like nectar, and where there's something that holds back or goes, wait a second, no, there's something, and not putting it on you or on me, but just noticing where something does that, those little movements. Because those little movements are what show up as you and me, and what show up as... So...
Yeah.
It's... and a deep curiosity, it's like, wow, there's no guarantee the human race is going to continue.
There really isn't. No, there really isn't.
We're really at a tipping point.
It's not only that the human race may not continue, but it's possible that the human race may be responsible for making sure a lot of other species can't continue either.
Can't continue either, yeah. And then just also to see that, wow, what's left in this system that's ignorant of how it's functioning, that's participating in that.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay, because it's like I see there's all these little nuances that this system still participates in that.
Yes, beautiful.
And it's like, wow, that brings me to my knees. It's like,
cool.
It's not, it's not out there. It's still, and
okay, yeah. Can I respond to that also?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm glad you brought that up, because that's very much what's been going on for me. But what is it now? The year, I think about 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, I had quite a major car accident.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Where, the car was just demolished. It was like crumpled up like a bit of paper.
Mm.
And it was a full speed car accident. I was driving at, at freeway speed, in the middle lane. You know how you get, there are 3 lanes going in the same direction. I was in the middle lane. So when you have a collision in the middle lane, and you've got cars on your left and right, logically that's not good news, because you're having a collision and you can't, but somehow I had a collision, which I can't say. Sometimes people have these stories about, oh, I was in a car accident and the other person was a terrible person. But I was actually responsible for a lapse of attention, So I've got to honor, that I was.
Can happen to anyone, man.
I was partially at fault. I mean, basically, we were going along I'll just say it to clarify that, as if you wonder what I'm talking about. We were going along at a certain speed. Siri produced a message about where to go next. I looked down at the map, just like that. In that moment, a car moved into my lane, which they're allowed to do, and then quickly slowed down. So by that time I looked up, suddenly there was a slowing down car in my lane that there wasn't there 2 seconds.
A second ago. Yeah.
So that still makes me responsible, because I was looking down, and so I slammed on my brakes, but which braked it, but I still hit the car in front, and that makes me legally responsible. If you rear end somebody, you're responsible. And that's an important thing about this story, that I couldn't just brush it off as bad luck. It was a lapse of attention. So I was knocked unconscious. I don't know how all this happened. I think my head kind of hit the side or something. The next thing happened was, when I came to, I was on the grass in the middle between the 2 directions. The car was crumpled, and I walked out without any broken bones. I still don't know how that happened.
Unreal, yeah.
So I went to the hospital. They did scans. I didn't have broken bones. I went home. And although I didn't have any broken bones, it was the most profound shock to the system.
Oh, I get it.
And shocking, that was exacerbated by the fact that I couldn't claim the victim role in this story, So I spent like 3 months kind of frozen. I did some EMDR and all this, but it took 3 months to really clear.
Yeah.
And during that time, a whole new wave of waking up happened for me.
Yeah.
Which was waking up to what it's like to be on this planet today. And I came to so I started to really think about, who do I really admire the most who's alive today? And I thought of Lynn Twist. And I thought of a bunch of, I thought of Barbara Marx Hubbard, and I thought of, Eric Edmeades. I thought of a bunch of people. And I thought, what do these people have in common? They're not primarily focusing on spirituality and awakening. Although that may very well be a big component of their life, what they're focusing on is contribution. Contributing to being a sane voice and turning the ship around. So Lynn Twist, she does have a powerful spiritual practice, but her life is about saving the Amazon rainforest, not about giving people awakening moments. So what came to me in that 3 months when I was lying in the bed was this, and I don't remember. Have you had a chance to look at Radical Brilliance of the book? I
did. You've done an amazing contribution.
Well, I didn't really do it. It kind of delivered itself. But in this kind of cycle, awakening is part of a cycle of brilliance where there are other components as well. So really this purple arrow, is the movement into awakening. This arrow is the movement in which creative impulses can reveal themselves. This arrow is where we get things done and actually accomplish things in the world. And this arrow, very important, which I love about you, is where we can feel the pain of not love and feel sorrow and actually learn from our mistakes and learn not to make those mistakes again. So this is actually what revealed itself for me. And it means I don't really present myself primarily as a spiritual teacher anymore, helping people to have awakening. I present myself, hopefully with some degree of humility, as somebody who can support people who want to make a difference in the world, where awakening is an important component of that, but not an end in itself. So that's kind of, just to follow on what you said, my kind of orientation has shifted that, I guess you could say, if you're on the deck of the Titanic and you can see the iceberg, And maybe or maybe not. Maybe we do or maybe we don't have an opportunity to turn the ship around. To go to your cabin and meditate on non-dual awareness doesn't necessarily seem like the best use of your time. You know, it would be great if all was well, but if there's actually an emergency, seems to me it'd be better to gather up the fruit of all your practice and then actually take some good action, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really where I'm at. You know, it's like I feel like spiritual awakening is an important component of a well-lived life. But if it becomes the goal, you know, me and my enlightenment, I feel it's a little bit like playing cards on the deck of the Titanic. You know, it may not be the best response. You know?
Yeah, you know, and I just look at what that touches in me, and for me, I see like. When I met Papaji, my focus was very much on turning the ship around. That was what it was for me. And then in meeting him, somehow that fell away, I could say, in a funny kind of a way, but in the way of, maybe to use the analogy, being on the Titanic and we've hit the iceberg and there's all these freaked out people who are going to die because they freaked out.
Yeah.
Or you know, like, and then just seeing if it's possible to be present in that freak out that allows whatever this transition is, because we don't know what's supposed to be. We don't know where it's going, but just that it happens in as loving presence as possible. So I'd say that's the nuance for me, is just being in that loving presence, not ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist, not trying to solve it. You know, I mean, for some people that's what they were born for. That's what the expression is. That's not, but just being, allowing whatever anyone's function is to function as best as it can.
Yeah. I think I wanted just to add a little, because I realized I misstated that slightly. I realize now this feels like my calling. You know, it feels like,
I love it.
It feels like my calling is to support people in that way. It doesn't mean it's everybody's calling. People have
I didn't feel like when you spoke it that it was projected onto me that I needed to be there.
Or onto anybody. I don't feel like spiritual teaching is a waste of time. It's just not what feel called to right now.
No, beautiful of you, so beautiful.
Wow.
On another note entirely, I've got to go any second.
For sure.
I was watching this documentary about artificial intelligence and what's happening in that arena, and how that's going to impact humanity so way more than anybody can even begin to imagine, because we're there. It's already happening. What people thought was going to be 100 years from now is happening, and it's also being used by the military to produce these robots, kill automatically without human. But it's also used like by Google to manage their energy efficiency. But the truth is, they don't know how artificial intelligence functions. And it can so easily take a twist that they hadn't anticipated. And like they had people on there, like this guy Ray Kurzweil and Elon Musk, who just saying it.
Movie, you're saying? It was in a movie.
Yeah.
What's the movie called?
Do you trust this computer? I'll send you the actual name. Can I trust my computer?
Okay. Is that like a real movie that goes in the movie?
Real movie. You know, the fact that like if you're using a phone, all your movements are tracked. Everything that you look at is tracked. I mean, there's so much information about you that's tracked and that's used by, in different ways by
commercial interest.
And these guys were saying that at this point, it's not a question. We somehow need to get around the fact that that's the next step, that humanity is going to kind of combine with this artificial intelligence. There's no way of stepping back from that. And I hadn't even considered that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
whoa, that's major.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Also, the implications, what that means for this divide between the rich and the poor. And I mean, there's so many aspects to that. It's just.
Yeah. Can I finish? Can I say one thing to that, or are you really out of time?
No, go. I'll hear when he calls me.
I had a conversation last year with Nicole Bradford, who was at that time, I believe she was still at that time, the senior engineer at Blizzard Entertainment. Okay. So Blizzard, they used to produce all these video games. So obviously they're still manufacturing those, but of course all the R and research and development is going into VR and AR, virtual reality and augmented reality. Yeah. And so she was telling me I don't know how old she was a year ago, but maybe I'm guessing 30s or something. And she told me that she was managing all these kids, kids recently out of college who had incredible programming skills. And she told me the question that everybody was asking within this environment was, can we build the algorithm to do this, right? And she said the question that she really became interested in and felt was urgent was, should we? Should we build the algorithm? Let me just...
And what these guys were saying is that question is we've breezed on past there because we can't hold it back anymore.
I know, but you see, let me just finish the thought about that because, for example, we can build an algorithm for a middle-aged man to put on goggles and sensors on his skin and headphones and to have a completely realistic experience of making love to a young woman in her 20s full of curves. So we can do that. The reason the should we comes up is, what is that going to do to his marriage? If he can just switch that on at any time, how will that impact his marriage? Is that going to increase intimacy with his partner or not? We can now create a completely realistic experience of murdering another human being that's completely real. So we can, but should we? And I bring this up because, so AR, VR, AI, these are all outwardly the evolutionary curve. But what I'm interested in is all of those things can be used destructively or constructively. So the next step that I'm interested in is, can humanity somehow learn that the spirit of not love hurts everybody? The spirit of non-love, it hurts the non-lover.
Then we're on the same page, my man.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I've just got my call. I need to go. I just so deeply enjoy.
Love you, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you. All right. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed talking to my old and very, very good friend, Isaac. If you also were in Lucknow, if you met Poonja, if you were lucky enough to meet him when he was alive, you might like to take a few minutes just to journal. Take a paper and journal. What was the impact of Lucknow for you? How has it left you? How has it impacted you? But equally, even if you weren't with Poonja in Lucknow, maybe you could reflect upon anybody who has been a teacher or any group that's been a sangha for you or any book or influence that has been a teaching for you, to reflect upon how have you assimilated it? How have you managed to extract the essence and to throw away the husk that is very often a distraction? I hope you'll get time to reflect upon this. I hope you're enjoying the Radical Brilliance podcast. I hope you will review us positively on Apple's podcast app. And I look forward to seeing you again next time.